Sky Movies on Camera celebrated the 40th anniversary of The Sound of Music by hosting a question and answer session at BAFTA. An invited audience were there to see Eamonn Holmes welcome one very special guest.
Please, would you welcome Dame Julie Andrews.
Hello, Eamonn. Nice to see you. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Wow. Hey, Tina. I want you to notice his tie and my suit. Will you look at that? And we didn't talk about it either.
I thought this may have been too sparkly.
Well...
Dame Julie, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Well, it is
at
an
least
honor
at the
for
moment
us.
it is, yeah.
Yeah. But you're so at ease on a stage. Was it always meant to be? Was it sort of predestined with you?
Oh, my parents were in showbiz, and I don't know if it was predestined, but I was raised sort of in the theatre and traveled with my parents and was a young child brat star that had a 4-octave range voice, and you know, dogs would come for miles when I'd sing very high and things like that. So I've been in the theatre a very, very long time, but I'm always nervous.
And were you born or blessed with that voice?
Yeah,
and that
I was.
picture?
I guess I was born with it. It was discovered when I was about 7. My stepfather was a tenor, and there's, as far as I know, there's nobody in the family that actually sang, but to keep me quiet, so to speak, when my school was closed down because of the escalation of the Second World War, my stepdad said, you know, well, let's give her something to do. And I think possibly it was an attempt to get a little close to this stepdaughter who was quite new, that didn't like him very much at the time. And so he began teaching me to sing, and I had to practice just a half hour every day. But and I didn't like it at all to start with, but I'm so glad they made me persevere. And very quickly thereafter, they realized that I did have this kind of freaky sound, and that they wanted me to get to a good teacher. And I was with that good lady who taught very, very well till she passed away.
See, that's amazing from such a young age. So there was never any time in your life when you felt that you would have to get a real job or a career or be a nurse or a teacher or...
Well, I wondered, you know, in the early days, I always thought I was just going to be that sort of one-time flash in the pan that would maybe make a splash, but then it would all go away. And I thought, well, what could I do? And I thought, well, I wouldn't mind opening a flower shop. That was one of the small things I thought about.
Julie's Flowers.
Yes.
That has a ring about it.
It does. And the other thing, I only knew that if I did anything, I hoped I'd do it well. That I did know somewhere deep inside.
40 years on, The Sound of Music, and here we have the DVD and the sing-along, which incidentally you'll not be forced to do tonight if you don't, if you don't want. What do you make of all that sing-along business?
I think it's terrific. It's kicked the movie up into a whole new sort of genre in a way. It makes people feel very happy. They can yell and scream and boo and hiss and everything else, and they seem to love it. I've never been to one of those sing-alongs. I think I'd love to be a fly on the wall, but...
Funny you should say that. What about your songs? Did you know, when you were making Sound of Music 40 years ago, would you have any indication, this is something special, this is something that's going to last?
Well, I don't think anybody knew it was going to be. How can you predict that it would be that kind of a huge success and that we'd be sitting here this 40 years later? I think we all felt that we had a lot going for us. We had glorious music, beautiful scenery, wonderful costumes, and a good story. And it was about decency and honor and all of those things. So I think we hoped it would be a success, but you could never predict that all those ingredients, plus a tremendous professionalism. Everybody gave the very best that they possibly could for that movie. The sound department, the lighting department, the orchestrations, they were wonderful, and I think it all just happily fell together.
And the backdrop, the scenery, the location filming.
Yeah.
The opening shot You know, the hills are alive.
Famous opening shot, yes.
Yeah. What do you remember about the opening shot?
I'll never forget it because, as you'll remember, I come across that open field and there was a huge helicopter coming at me through the trees with a very brave cameraman strapped to the side of it. And he would start at one end of the field and I would start at the other, and we'd come together, and this helicopter would kind of come at me sideways, sort of like a mad crab or a grasshopper. And then when he got the shot, he would go around me and go back to the beginning of the field, and I'd go back to my start, and we'd shoot it many, many times. The only trouble was that when the helicopter went around me to start again, the downdraft from the jets knocked me flat into the grass. So time and again, I just bit the dust. And I thought, well, you know, a couple of times I can manage this. But after a while, I got terribly angry, and I braced myself, and still I bit the dust. And I finally thought I was asking the pilot to make a bigger circle so that I didn't get knocked down. And all I got was a great, you know, let's do it another time.
The hills are alive with the sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song it hears.
The scenery itself, how much did it add, do you think, to the whole feeling of that film?
Yeah, enormously, Eamonn. There was a lot of rain, and there were a lot of these beautiful thunderhead clouds, and instead of being just pretty picture postcard, Bob Wise, our director, said he thought it added enormously to the texture of the film. It actually was an extra dividend for the film to have that beautiful, that extraordinary looking weather.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Talking about extraordinary, Maria von Trapp. Was it intimidating having her there?
I thought it might be, but she was lovely. She was very welcoming to me and very gung-ho. She was quite pretty. Bob Wise said he thought she was slightly opinionated, but I think he dealt with that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was fine.
What's your philosophy in musicals where you have to go from dialogue into song? Is it like an airplane going down the runway? Does it build up speed and you get there? Or...
Well, as you know, Eamonn, all the songs are pre-recorded long before you get to make the film. You go into a recording booth, and you, of course, have planned either the montage of Do, Re, Mi, or you know what you think you'll be doing, but you've not been there yet. And so if, for instance, you're running down the arbor, or if you're climbing the steps, you try to make it sound vocally as if you're either a little out of breath or you've got energy in your voice or something, and you try to imagine it as you're going so that when you actually get there it doesn't sound too bland or sedate, you know.
Oh, a deer, a female deer, hooray, a drop of golden sun. Me, a name I call myself, a long, long way to run. So, a needle pulling thread, la, a note to follow, so tea, a drink with jam and bread, that will bring us back to so, do, la, fa, mi, do, re. So, do, la, fa, ti, la, so, ti, do.
Tell me about your director, Bob Wise. What was he like to work for him? Because he'd worked under Orson Welles a lot. He'd learnt his trade.
Well, he was a quiet, decent, kind, gentle man. He taught me a lot. Taught me all sorts of things, like when you're in tremendous close-up on a huge screen, you can't really look at a person. You can't look into their eyes because your eyes are always focusing on one eye or the other. If you're not careful, they're dancing all over the place.
And this is where you sing a love song to Christopher Plummer, is
Right,
it? Yeah.
right. And so he said, you know, just keep very, very still and try not to blink too much. And many, many little tiny things that mattered. Our cameraman decided to light that glorious hexagonal gazebo with a huge shaft of light down each column. Now, the lights in those days were these huge Klieg lights that had the carbons that rubbed together to make the light. And they really objected, these lamps, to being tipped so far down to make a shaft of moonlight. And so Chris and I would be gazing into each other's eyes, I mean, nose to nose, and you'd suddenly hear this terrible groan or squeak or something like that. And it was like a comment on our performances. It was towards the end of the movie, and I think we were a bit tired. So he moved us, very smart, he moved us into the shadows of the silhouette for the end of the scene. And it was as much, it was a creative idea, but it was as much to take away the worry of maybe having the giggles at a very important moment in the film.
I reckon he had his hands full. He had all that rain to deal with,
yes.
and he had all those kids to deal with.
Salzburg had Europe's 7th highest annual rainfall, and it rained and rained and rained.
What was it like working with the children?
Okay, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You'd think it would have been, you know, terrible, but each one of them was a complete individual. The first thing we shot, almost the first thing on the whole film, was the favorite things sequence in the bedroom.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Oh, together. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into spring. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog barks.
Why does The Sound of Music work? Why does it endure?
I can't honestly say it's any one thing. As much as anything, again, I have to say I think it's the exquisite way the film was made, because it was so carefully and beautifully crafted. And long after we'd finished our work, the sound department, I mean, every country that it played in, I know our associate producer, Sol Chaplin, would go and actually make sure that the quality of sound was the same as it was in America, in any country.
Yeah. Talking about the quality of sound, it doesn't get much better than Rodgers and Hammerstein.
No, it doesn't.
What
No.
were they like as a parent?
Lovely. I'd been fortunate enough to do a television program with them based on Cinderella. They wrote a musical of Cinderella, and I was the lucky lady that was playing Cinderella, and they were gentle giants would be the best thing. Rodgers, I didn't see that much, although he was lovely, but Hammerstein was the one that I would run into once in a while. I remember when I was doing Cinderella, I was standing in the wings, and this was a live show that was going out that night, and some kind fellow said to me, "You do realize that if this is a success, more people will see this tonight than if you played 15 years in My Fair Lady." And I thought, that's not a very smart thing to be telling me right this minute. And in rehearsals, I was standing in the wings, and I have no idea why, but I was singing a song the last time I saw Paris. I was whistling it or humming it or something, and a voice behind me said, "You know, I meant every word of that when I wrote it," and I had no idea that Hammerstein had written it. And I turned around and we had a little chat about it, and it was because he'd been back after the war, and he saw the devastation, and he remembered how lovely Paris was and now is again. But what a nice moment to have with as great a giant as that.
You mentioned My Fair Lady there. You did that on stage, but you didn't do it on screen. Why was that? Were you in the running for that?
Yes, I think I was for a while. I know, I don't know whether it's true or not, but Alan J. Lerner, the wonderful, wonderful librettist and writer of next to George Bernard Shaw, said that he hoped I would get it for the movie. But you know, I had only ever done Broadway. I'd never made a movie in my life. And so I well understood why they didn't choose me and why they opted to go for Audrey, who became a great friend. And she said to me, she said, "You should have done it, Julie, but I didn't have the guts to turn it down." And she was a really nice friend and lovely lady. And I understood it then. I guess subsequently over the years, I wished somewhere I'd put the role down definitively on television or just on a special or something. but it wasn't to be. And then it's silly to worry, because 6 months later, Walt Disney came and saw me in Camelot and asked if I'd like to go to Hollywood and make that movie. And life is wonderful, and I'm terribly lucky.
Mary Poppins is your first exposure on screen.
Yes.
On the big
first
screen.
film,
And
yeah.
you walk off with an Oscar.
Well, I mean, there you are.
It's only downhill after that, isn't it? what was that?
What it is, Eamonn, is you fight like the devil to learn your craft, because, you know, you get terribly fortunate and lucky, and then it's, God, do I really know what I'm doing?
Yeah. And did you know what you were doing? Because obviously you knew what you were doing as regards your singing, as regards your acting and whatever. Nowadays, every film you go to, whether it's Lord of the Rings, Narnia, whatever it happens to be now, it's all shot blue screen, they call it.
Yes, it
computer
is. And we
graphics.
did a lot of that on Poppins, of course.
Were you pioneers with that?
I think to a certain extent we were. It certainly was the first live action and animated film that Disney had ever done. No, they'd done one before it, a sort of an attempt at one before that, but this was the first really big one. And I think we were sort of pioneers. There'd been a lot of blue screen before that, but mostly only for animation, not the two, you know.
It's tremendous thrill. Listening to you talking about that, it's a tremendous thrill for me, because it brings me back to when I was 4 years of age, and it's the first movie I can remember seeing in the cinema. And I was doing really well. I was enjoying it immensely. I remember this. And then they got to that song, Feed the Birds. Well, it doesn't sound like that. But that tuppence, that tuppence a bag business.
Yes.
But that's I don't like that song.
You don't?
No.
Well, it goes on a bit.
And I did fall asleep at that stage. I remember.
You were only 4, for God's sake. You know, I'm doing my math tremendously right at this point. No, it probably did go on a little long, maybe, especially for a 4-year-old.
So what did you do then? So you said you had to fight like fury afterwards. You got the Oscar. Was there then a stage where you felt, or you were advised to say, look, I've got to live these down. I've got to change. I've got to do something that's going to shock people. Was that a conscious thing?
No, as a matter of fact, as a second movie, I was asked to do a lovely film called The Americanization of Emily.
James Garner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been more different, couldn't have been darker. It was a black and white movie, but the thing is that you're best remembered for those which are the most successful, and I just got fortunate enough to be very successful in those two movies were huge, so that any other movies that I'd made along the way, just although they were different, they weren't as remembered. So I think that's probably, I didn't make a conscious choice.
But then when you married Blake Edwards and you made films with him, and there was a few that were, you know, but you know, people would say Julie Andrews in that, S.O.B. And did you
How old were you when you saw that?
I never saw that. I'm still not allowed to see that. It's on late on Sky Movies when I'm in bed. But you didn't use a body double in that.
No, I didn't. No. Damn right I didn't.
So how long? I mean, that had to be a big thing in your life to say, I'm going to go.
No, come on, Eamonn. First of all, it was, thank God, a totally valid reason to do it. I mean, the whole movie was about that. And secondly, the movie was made 10 years after my husband wrote it. Mm-hmm. And every studio said they loved it. And then they wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, because they were frightened it was about them, and it probably was. And so 10 years later, the movie finally got made. And by that time, I'd gotten kind of used to the idea, and Blake was very tactful, and it was a very quiet set. And there you are.
I think Christopher Plummer said during The Sound of Music that you seduced the world with that role.
Oh, what a nice thing to say.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that seduction still carries on, but that is a big mantle to carry. The Oscar with Mary Poppins, the legacy of Sound of Music. Did you ever feel that it was going against you and that you had to work twice as hard as anybody else to maintain your career?
No, and I don't think so, and I don't think I would ever knock it, because I mean, I'm the lucky person that got asked to play those movies. There are hundreds of wonderfully talented ladies around who sing just as well or better than I do, but I was the one that got asked, and so it is good fortune, and I have been very blessed.
Whether you were a dame or not, I think everybody would just assume she should be a dame. You carry that off very, very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you do royalty very well. In the Princess Diaries.
Hello, BAFTA people.
And I have to see the Princess Diaries, you know, because my daughter, that's the, you know, the sort of film that they go to again.
Yes, it's the new generation.
It is the new,
Yes.
I mean, that must have been fantastic. I mean, you just suddenly got this.
Oh, there's a wonderful story, Eamonn, of this little girl that came up with her mother, and her mother, the little girl was only 6 or something, or 5, and her mother said, look, do you know who this lady is? And the little child looked very blank. And the mother said, Mary Poppins, and she still looked blank. And she said, and Sound of Music, Maria. And she still looked blank. And she said, and Princess Diaries. And she went, oh, cool. So I don't know what one learns from something like that.
So you've done 2 of those.
Yes, yes.
And then Shrek.
And then Shrek.
Yeah, what was that like?
Fun, different. Really different. It's nothing like making a film. It's an animated feature, and you go into a booth all by yourself. You don't bounce off anybody. You just have the director saying, now say that differently. Now give me it sad. Now give it me angry. And so you give them a whole bunch of stuff, and then 6 weeks later you might come back and do a bit more. And then you finally see the film and say, ah, that's what it was all about.
Let's not just sit here with our tummies rumbling. Everybody dig in.
Don't mind if I do, Lillian.
So, I suppose any grandchildren I could expect from you would be...
Ogres. Yes.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Right, Harold?
Oh, no! No, of course not. That is assuming you don't eat your own young.
Dad?
Oh, no. We usually prefer the ones who've been locked away in a tower.
Shrek, please.
I only did that because I love her.
Oh, aye. Daycare or Dragon Guarded Castle?
You wouldn't understand. You're not her father.
It's so nice to have the family together for dinner. Harold! Shrek!
Fiona?
Fiona!
Mom! Harold!
Donkey!
I've never been busier. And I mean that. I run a children's publishing imprint. I have my own small publishing company with one of my daughters. It's called the Julie Andrews Collection, and to date we must have published now about 19 books, and about 13 of them, 14 of them in fact, with one coming out, mine or mine and hers, and I'm loving doing that. I've begun to direct in the United States for the theatre. I hope to do more.
The whole debate in Britain at the moment is about pensions and people retiring. Do you never think of it?
I think the most important thing, my dad actually was a school teacher, and he said something so wonderful. He said that it is your God-given duty, if you don't have an immediate talent, to keep your brain as active as you possibly can. And when he was 74, he took himself back to university to learn German. And he got his O-level or A-level or whatever it was at that time. And what an example he set us, you know. So I've got good
I think both
parents.
Mum and Dad would be very, very proud of you. Of course they would be. What an example you have set to so many people. Dame Julie Andrews, it's been a pleasure.
It's been
talking to
lovely,
you.
Eamonn. Thank you
very
so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.